Hey everybody, Sam Drake here. I just saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and I was so enthralled that I thought I'd come home and make my first YouTube video about it. Right off the bat, I'll just say that I love the movie. The first Spider-Verse is one of my favorite films of all time, so I'm very pleased to report that this movie lived up to the hype that I've been seeing around and in my own personal expectations, and it exceeded them. So I'm going to go over some quick non-spoiler thoughts before I go into spoiler territory. First off, I was a huge fan of The Spot. I'm a huge Jason Schwartzman fan, so seeing him play not only a hilarious Spider-Man villain, but my favorite villain archetype, which I'll discuss in the spoiler section, was a huge positive for me. He had me laughing out loud in the theater almost with every line. I thought the character development of Miles and Gwen was excellent, and the implied development of Peter B. Parker I was a huge fan of. I'm a huge Peter B. Parker stan, so I was a really big fan of his part that he played in the movie. A small complaint that I have is I honestly feel like he could have been in the movie a lot more. He was a really big part of why I loved the first movie so much, but he did have a heart-to-heart in this movie that was very satisfying to see. But again, that scene could have definitely breathed a little bit more. Another quick complaint was that I was conscious of the fact that it was the first of a two-parter, so once things started getting climactic, it's hard not to think of where the movie is going to wrap up. But turning a negative into a positive, a good thing about the movie was that it kept going, and ended up into a really, really interesting cliffhanger that made me think of another certain second film in a trilogy, which I'll discuss again in the spoilers. My final real gripe was that some Spider-Men started to get a little one note for me, but it quickly blew over as the plot continued with them. The art especially is the heart of this movie. The backgrounds of Gwen's scene specifically soak you into this world like no other dimension in the movie, and it's all just done by watercolors and abstract art. The music was also really well fitting, and the licensed music was once again very good. I'm not sure if there's Sunflower levels of iconic here, but it's still a very fantastic soundtrack, and the creeping back of one motif from the original movie's score made me feel very certain type of ways near the end of the film. I don't think you need to be a fan of comic book movies or Spider-Man in general to like this movie. I feel like the vibe check is the first movie. If you like that movie and you're more open to out there many plots going at once story, then there's nothing not to like here. I can see some aspects of the story pissing some people off, but the way that it ties into the storytelling and what they're shaping up for in the finale of this story and in the next film, it's just something that we have to go with, and I'm sure will be expanded on further in the sequel. Now we're going to start going into spoilers, so if you've made it this far and have not seen the movie, please go and support this movie at the box office so we can get more awesome animated movies like this. Thank you for sticking around, and now let's get into spoilers. Let's break up the spoiler discussion just by order of the film, so we'll start with the prologue. I thought that it did a really good job of catching up the one person who did not see the first movie and setting up Gwen's current mental state for this movie. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with how much there was to it, and it was a great tone setter. Again, the art in this dimension was a major standout here, so I was very happy that the film started here. It was actually my favorite dimension in the first movie. To see glimpses of it there and see it much more expanded here was a great start to the movie for me. Now we'll go into the first about 40% of the movie, which is what I'll call the Spot half. Again, the Spot had me laughing out loud in the theater, but I am very biased as I love Jason Schwartzman, and he played my favorite villain archetype, which is the villain just trying to get stronger, only to beat the protagonist out of pure hatred. The fact that he tied into the first movie so much, being there for the defeat of Kingpin and the birth of Miles as Spider-Man, I really liked that aspect of the movie. What I also loved about this half was how much it tied into Miles' current relationship with his family, which is something I really liked about the first movie, is the familial aspect to it. As small as it was in the first movie, it's almost a full secondary plot here in this film. This is also where the Miles and Gwen dynamic is tested as Miles tries to fit in with the rest of the Spider people. At first you really do feel for Miles, like, damn, I thought this was an exclusive club, but T-Rex Spider-Man is here? This is also where we get to Spider-Man India's portion of the film, which was, as a whole, very fun. At first, he was pretty one note, being the character observing and pointing out the awkwardness between Miles and Gwen, but it goes away after a bit once the danger and major plot sets in, which I'll get into discussing now. When Miles is brought into the Spider Hole, which is what I'll call where all the Spideys hang out, and it's revealed that he was actually never supposed to be Spider-Man, and he goes against the canon just by existing, that's where I can see it losing some people, honestly. As soon as Oscar Isaac said, "The canon," I did genuinely laugh out loud. But like I said, now that we see where it's going, and Miles' whole thing seems to be that he goes against the canon to make his own story, that's where it won me back, basically, completely. And quickly, this is also where I'll say that I'm very sad that PS4 Peter Parker did not have more than one line. I would have loved for him to be a small side character akin to the Scarlet Spider, who is also very funny. This is also the first part of the movie that I cried at when they show 2002 Uncle Ben dying and Peter crying in the frame next to him, and they held on it just for so long that I couldn't help but tear up. And the other moment I teared up was Peter B. Parker's heart-to-heart with Miles, where he said that he only had Mayday because of him. I feel like that scene could have breathed a little bit more if I'm being honest, but again, I'm a huge Peter B. Parker fan. He really could have been in the movie more if I'm being honest. I want to start talking about the ending now, which is also known as Back to the Spider-Verse Part 2. Yes, when I realized that we were not in Miles' homeworld, I immediately thought of Back to the Future 2, which made me very happy. The whole idea of this world not having a Spider-Man, being overcome with crime, and Miles being the Prowler. Not just Uncle Aaron being alive, but Miles is the Prowler. That's what I thought immediately when it was revealed that it wasn't his world. Well, where's this Miles? He obviously isn't Spider-Man, so who is he? And the reveal was played up really well. I feel like the setup for the sequel is really fantastic, and I feel like all the characters are going to be pushed into really unique directions. Closing thoughts, I obviously really loved the movie, probably as much if not a little bit more than the first. It's a little hard to say which one I like more, but it's just because the first is a more complete movie, and the second movie is definitely the first part of a two-parter. I'm really glad that both movies had amazing villains, and both of them were just really great Spider-Man films. Let's hope they stick the landing. I'd love to hear where your thoughts are about where the trilogy is going to go and what your favorite moments of the movie were. YouTube seems to be doing a really good job lately of pushing smaller creators, so I'm going to please ask that if you enjoyed the video and you feel so inclined, please subscribe, leave a like, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. I'm going to give Spider-Verse a 5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your night. Come back soon.